Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I will take nominations for a moderator.
Chair, I would like to nominate Richard Spencer.
Okay, Richard Spencer has been nominated and been seconded. Any other nominations? Dean Libby has been nominated. Thank you, Mr. Libby. Mr. Libby declines. Any others? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Yes, please. I guess we're going to use these little orange cards here tonight. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So, Mr. Spencer, you have been duly elected as our moderator.
The first order of business is for me to be sworn in as moderator and then to have the ballot clerks be sworn in as the ballot.
Do you, Richard Spencer, swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Maine so long as you shall continue to be a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent upon you as the moderator of the RSU 67 budget meeting on July 11, 2012, according to the Constitution and the laws of the state, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. I will take a signature.
Could the ballot clerk come forward to be sworn? Of the RSU 67 budget meeting being held July 11, 2012, according to the Constitution and the laws of the state, so help me God. And everyone has signed. So thank you, everybody. You must be getting kind of tired of seeing me up here. I'll go through the same preliminaries that I've gone through at previous budget meetings. First of all, as a matter of procedure, unless there's objection, I would conduct the meeting according to the Maine Moderator's Manual, which is the procedural booklet produced by Maine Municipal Association for town meetings, except to the extent that the Maine laws provide for different laws for school budget meetings. And there are some examples of that. For instance, 10% of the people at a school budget meeting can request a written ballot, whereas at a town meeting, it would require a vote of the town. So it would be the Maine Moderator's Manual, except as modified by Maine statutes, backed up, if necessary, by Robert's Rules of Order. The other thing is, as in the past, personnel matters are confidential and should not become the subject of a budget meeting. And in general, I will ask people to refrain from personal or attacks on individuals in the conduct of the meeting. Under the rules that apply, someone who's not a resident of RSU 67 cannot speak at the meeting unless the meeting votes to allow them to speak. And there are some members of the administration of the RSU who are available here to answer questions but are not residents. And they are, the superintendent is, by statute, is allowed to present the budget, but otherwise, the people that need a vote of the meeting to participate in the meeting or speak would be Denise Hamlin, the superintendent, Kathy Bernard, the curriculum director, Lowell Jones, the principal of the junior high school, Chris Cowing, the assistant principal, and David Ham, whoever he is. So I would ask for a vote of the meeting to allow those 4 individuals to speak or answer questions of the meeting, even though they're not residents. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That's a vote. This is a second budget meeting, and there was an explanation previously on the budget. Is there anybody from the board or the administration who wants to make a presentation about the budget, or shall I move directly to the articles?
Welcome tonight to our budget meeting. You're voting tonight on 15 articles that equal $12,300,000 to fund our school budget for the coming 2012-2013 year. This is our second or third go-around. We've done meetings in each one of the communities. We've done 2 public budget meetings here for the board. Your instructional budget is $5,222,459.07.69. Your special education budget is $1.4,558,000. Your vocational budget is $595,840.99. Your other instruction is $410,890. Staff and student support is $1,060,795. System administration is $482,278. School administration is $732,235, and transportation is $744,778. Your maintenance budget is $1,650,167.32. We do have a budget of about approximately 84% fixed cost, so the amount of budget that we actually have flexibility outside staff is about 13%. This is a budget that started to come together last November. We worked with the administrative team who worked with the teachers to put together the needs of the district, the staffing plans, maintenance, transportation, and we bring you today a $12,300,000 budget. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of preliminary matters. The way the state law is set up for school budgets, there's a series of articles which are called expenditure articles. They give the school board the authority to spend money. And those are articles 1 through articles 1 through 9. Then there's what I would call revenue articles, which raise the money necessary to fund the budget that has been approved in the first 9 articles. And the state law says that those articles, which are Articles 10 through 14, have to be adopted by a recorded vote. There's actually no case law as to what that means, but I think it means an actual count of how many people voted yes and no. And so on those articles, we'll require that actual count. We'll probably end up counting the earlier articles if there's any question as to whether they passed or not, but it's not legally required. And then finally on Article 14, which is the additional local funds article, that budget that's proposed exceeds what's called the state's essential programs and services model. And so if the budget exceeds that model, the statute requires that be adopted, that vote be adopted by a written ballot. So if I can remember, I'll require a written ballot on Article 14. The statute provides, as I mentioned, that if 10% of the people at the meeting request a written ballot on an article, then the meeting has to vote by a written ballot. And there are presently 88 people at the meeting. So if 9 people request a written ballot on any article, we'll have to vote on it by written ballot. The general procedure that I'll follow is somebody will make a motion, somebody will second it. After that motion has been made and seconded, if someone wants to change the amount of that article, they can offer an amendment to the article. And the way the warrant articles are set up in this warrant, the meeting can either raise the amount or lower the amount by an amendment. And so if somebody makes an amendment on the article, that amendment will take precedence over the main motion. And we'll vote on the amendment first, and then if it passes, we'll vote on the main motion as amended. If the amendment fails, somebody could make another amendment if they want to, and that will continue until we get to a article that's as amended or not, and then vote on that article. The way the state law for school budget meetings is now set up, this meeting is just the first stage of a 2-step process. And the voters assembled tonight at this meeting are required by the statute to adopt a budget. And then on July 30th, there will be a referendum vote. And the question at the referendum vote is, do you approve the budget that was adopted at this meeting? And the voters can vote yes or no at the referendum on that. And if they vote no, then the school board has to call another budget meeting and then have another referendum. And the only way, I used to shoot like pigeons, the only way you can adopt a budget is to hit a double. In other words, you have to get a budget passed at this meeting, and then you have to get it approved at a referendum. And that, under the statute, that process can essentially go on indefinitely until you get approval at both a meeting and a referendum. What the law says is that if the budget adopted at this meeting isn't approved at the referendum, on an interim basis, the budget that was last adopted at one of these meetings becomes the interim budget until a final budget is finally approved. So if you adopt the budget tonight and then it's voted down in referendum, the budget you adopted tonight will become the budget until a final budget is adopted when the voters adopt the budget at a meeting and then it gets approved at referendum. So with those preliminaries, I will move to Article 1, which is to...
I have a procedural question first, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
Why are we only voting on Articles 1 through 15 rather than Articles 1 through 21 as the original vote on the
The reason for that is that the state budget law lays out these mandatory articles as the budget articles, and when the vote is adopted or not adopted at the referendum, it's only the 15 articles that are voted down at the referendum. The other articles that were on the warrant are not considered to be the budget for purposes of the referendum. So they were approved at the prior meeting, and they stay approved.
So just one more procedural question. With regards to Article 20, at the last meeting, we reduced the amount that we were transferring from the unexpended balances to the capital reserve fund. That stays the way it was voted on at the last meeting.
That stays the way it was voted on at the last meeting, and that means that those funds that were not transferred into the capital reserve fund are now in the undesignated fund balance of the district, and if they're appropriated, they can be appropriated tonight, or if they're not appropriated tonight, they would go into what's called the undesignated fund balance, and they would be available if there were a budget emergency. The board could call a special budget meeting, or if that didn't happen, they would be carried forward and available to apply to the next year's budget, if that's what the board and the voters decide to do.
And then one more procedural question. The revenues on this page were not updated to reflect that undesignated fund balance amount. Can I ask what that balance is for June 30? Has come and gone, we should have a number that's actual?
You can certainly ask that question, and I think I would suggest that on that question, you ask that question after we've made a motion and we're actually discussing an article. Any further procedural questions? If not, Article 1, to see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for regular education for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. This article includes costs for all 4-year-olds to grade 12 instructional programs, gifted and talented, and alternative education programs. Is there a motion on Article 1?
Moderator, move to adopt Article 1 as read.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on Article 1?
I would actually like to ask permission if I could move my question for Articles 1 through 9. It's the same question, so that I don't have to keep getting up and getting down.
Go ahead, and if I think it's out of order, I'll let you know, but otherwise I'll let you proceed.
I just want to know if Articles 1 through 9 are the same that were presented on June 6th as it stands. So they have the same exact dollar amounts. Okay. And why, when several adjustments were made to the budget, have there not been any concessions made to look at that and make changes based on what your taxpayers are telling you that they want to have happen with this budget? Why have there not been changes brought forth to the people?
I will answer that in that when the changes were made here at this particular budget meeting, and then it went out to the validation vote, it was voted down. And as a board, we decided to come back with our budget as we had discussed it over the months and planned on it, because we feel it is fiscally responsible.
And I understand that, but there were majority votes that were happening throughout all those articles, and if people are explaining to you that they want certain things to happen, I understand we're dealing with fiscal responsibility of the taxpayer. I understand that. I understand that people have constraints. I have a grandmother who's on a fixed income budget. But at the same time, if we're asking you to make changes, I think that it's not very responsible for us to come in and not be trying to make changes to meet some of the concessions, to compromise, to collaborate with our public on what we're willing to pay.
there any further discussion on Article 1?
I meant to get up first, but I know a lot of people in the room are wondering, every time we have one of these meetings, you travel a long ways to be here. How much do we pay you to come all this from the Portland area, I believe? What is that amount every time we have one of these meetings in case we keep having these meetings?
The cost of the district is billed by me at my hourly rate, which is $220 an hour.
And do we pay you as you travel as well?
Yes.
Approximately how many hours were you here last time, let's say?
I think about 10.
My next question is for the superintendent. Are there any able-bodied moderators within a 100-mile radius that we could pay less?
Does anyone want to respond to that?
We work with Drummond and Woodsum on a regular basis. They are our school attorney, and because of the difficulties we have had with our budget, we feel we need someone who is qualified to make sure that the rules of this budget meeting are upheld, and the articles are all voted on appropriately, and any of your questions, legal questions, can be answered as you ask them.
Yes, sir.
Can't hear you.
What?
Show up this year. We get a rebate on that?
I certainly didn't send a bill for that.
Oh, you should have given us something because it screwed up what whole evening was.
Further discussion on Article 1.
Mr. Moderator, I'll ask the question again. At the last district meeting that we had here on Article 20, we reduced the amount we wanted to transfer from unexpended balances to the capital reserve fund. In this proposed budget that we see before us tonight, where is that number subtracted off the budget?
It's not subtracted off this budget. This budget is presented so that each one of these departments can be funded properly. That $137,000, I think $550, whatever that change amount is, has been voted on by our board and decided by our board to put that in an undesignated fund balance so that, and we did it that way so that we could leave that out of this budget process so that we could have that with several different options, and it would always be subject to a budget meeting such as this to be approved. If we had an emergency, if we have some need, unanticipated need that arises, that we would not impact this budget with that. And so it's set aside in an undesignated fund and can be either carried forward or it can be expended. If we decide we need it and the voters approve it, we can expend it at some point. So that's why it's not in this budget here.
One more question. On the back page of this informational sheet that you handed out tonight, the estimated June 12 balance is the same as what it was in June when we had this meeting. What's the actual balance that was brought forward?
We had an additional $7,100 in change that will be added to the carry forward balance.
Plus, we have this 137 that is not part of the carry forward, but it's in a separate
It's not part of this
undesignated.
budget at all. It does not fund that 12.3 million right now.
Right, but it's in a fund by itself. It's not part of the carried forward.
No, it is not.
So the carried forward amount is 407,000 plus.
Can I correct? I think there's a concept which is called the undesignated fund balance, which is it's the amount of funds that the district, the RSU has at the end of the year that hasn't been appropriated toward a budget. The budget, I don't have all the figures in front of me, but the budget that you have applies some part, I believe, of the balance forward toward this year's budget. So far, that 137,000 has not been applied to this year's budget and would be carried forward until next year. So the amount that would remain in undesignated fund balance, if you adopted this budget, would be 137,000 more than it would have been if you had adopted the budget that was adopted before. So it's in effect funds that haven't been appropriated that are being carried forward, either available to meet an emergency if the voters vote to approve it, or that's available the following year. I don't know if that helps to clarify.
Well, maybe I need to ask a follow-up question. So the 400,000 that was originally proposed to be carried forward is all that was in the undesignated fund balance at June 30?
That I don't know. That's the amount that the board voted to apply to the budget.
The additional funds were $7,492.59. So that would be added to the 400,000.
So originally, you were going to use your full carried forward amount to help fund the current budget.
400,000 was an estimate. And we ended up with $7,492 more than that.
But now we can add the 137,000 more.
No, it's undesignated right now.
It's undesignated right now. If the meeting wanted to expend that money and appropriate it at this budget meeting, you have the legal authority to do that. Is there further discussion on Article 1? Just as a matter of procedure, I will try to let everybody speak once before people speak twice, but I don't see anyone who wants to speak.
The first time we met, we actually voted down this exact Article 1, but a lot of the discussion that day was about the MASH clinic, and I'm not sure my question was answered that night, as I've had a month to think about it. The change this year comes in the $45,000 grant. That will no longer be a grant, it will be in this budget. But we've been told numerous times that the cost of the MASH clinic is over $180,000. Where does the rest of that cost fall? Does it fall on Health Access Network, or is that somewhere else in the budget? The change is only the $45,000.
I don't know where you got that amount of money. That we have $45,000 that we have committed to the MASH unit to contract $45,000 worth of service.
I remember someone came up to the microphone, it seemed like it was somebody from the Health Access Network, sorry I can't say that tonight, and said that the cost was much more and gave a number similar to that. So the total cost to RSU 67 will be $45,000.
Potentially, if we spend all of the funds to contract service, it will be $45,000.
In the past, how much has the cost? I mean, it seems like it would cost more than $45,000 to run the MASH clinic for an entire year in the past. Has that come out of community service from them, or how has that happened?
Health Access owned the grant, they wrote the grant, they provided us the services under the grant. We don't know what it actually cost them to provide the services. We just know that we had a $45,000 grant that funded, that Health Access got, that they used to provide us service. So the $45,000 is what we were going to make up to continue those services. What it actually cost them is something that you would have to go to find out from them.
Okay, so if 3 months into MASH clinic, it runs out of money, the MASH clinic unfortunately.
That's right, it runs out of money.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on Article 1? If not, I'll call for a vote on Article 1. All in favor, please raise your cards. There's been a motion to have a vote by paper ballot. If 10% of the meeting requests a written ballot, then we do it by written ballot. All in favor of doing a written ballot, please raise your hand. More than 10% of the meeting having requested a written ballot, will vote by written ballot on Article 1. So the ballot clerks, please take oath.
I just got here just 5 minutes. I don't know if there was a method. I didn't know, so I didn't know I have one. That just means someone should have made an amendment before I got here, so I'm just not going to apply these. Because it's written there, that's very Sorry, I just, you know, I've learned when it comes to this not to assume anything. Especially after last time.
Does anybody who hasn't voted on Article 1, please make sure that your ballot gets to the ballot clerks? I think the procedure is to pass the ballot down to the end of the row. motion to approve Article 1 as recommended by the board has failed. The meeting has an obligation to adopt a budget under the statute. And so I'm going to ask that somebody make a motion on a different amount. There has to be a referendum on June 30th to approve the budget that was adopted at this meeting. Apparently the meeting does not approve the amount that has been recommended by the school board. So I'm going to ask for a motion on a different amount.
The actual date is July 31st.
July 31st, sorry. So is there another motion on Article 1?
Continue, my wife's question was, why are we wasting time voting on the same budget that we failed before, and now failing again? Why don't we adjust it before we came here today?
The vote, okay, whoa. I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
The budget right now, the contracts have been negotiated. We can't negotiate contracts for anybody who works here this year, okay? We're going into negotiations, and we misspoke in the board meeting. We have 2 negotiations next year. The teachers, and I believe the janitors, okay? So we have 2 negotiations. We have the money, the $130,000 in the undesignated, unallocated fund. This budget, the reason this budget was brought back is it's fiscally responsible. We hear what you're saying about trying to raise the teachers' pay. We hear that. But we also are having special elections that is going to cost the community money. I'm sure Ms. Mayo can tell us how much a special election is going to cost if we keep voting this down. And we have already fixed these numbers for teachers' pay this year. Not to say that we're not going right back into negotiations and we're going to negotiate in good faith, but we cannot and will not do that in public. So I'd like to raise Article 1 to $5,222,460 even. And I'd like to pass that and move on and get a budget, and we all come back to the table, and everybody come to the budget meeting so we can talk about that then, not in these meetings.
Could you repeat the amount that you're moving?
$5,222,460 even.
Second.
$5,222,460
Yes.
even. There's a motion on the floor to approve Article 1 in the amount of $5,222,460. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion?
I'm speaking very clearly. It's not about Article 1. I will work for the same amount of money that I'm making right now. I have a problem with the entire budget. Okay? There are things, and we're making this about Article 1, and it's not just about Article 1. It's about Article 4 and Article 6 and other things that we're having issues with. When are we going to be listened to? Because I feel very frustrated right now, and I feel like I'm not being heard, and I'm not the only person coming up here to the mic. Unfortunately, it's a bad time for a meeting. People are out camping. People are having fun with their families. God knows I wish I was down watching my daughter play softball tonight, but I felt I had a responsibility to be here. I'm just getting more frustrated by the second because we are not hearing the taxpayers. I am fortunate enough to be a taxpayer, a parent, and a teacher in this wonderful district. But when I feel like I'm not being listened to, and I know I'm not the only person, but I will not speak for anybody else but myself, it's very hard to sit here and pass a budget that is not being collaborated and compromised on. Whether I come to the meeting or not, if there has been something said at one of these meetings, people are trying to raise or trying to lower something in the budget, then you need to adhere to what those people are saying. You need to make some concessions. You need to make some compromises. I'm not saying we can't still put together a fiscally responsible budget. I think we can. Okay? But to come back with the same thing is really disappointing. And it's not just about Article 1, because I will work for the same amount of money next year.
Yes, sir.
And when we put together this budget, what I'm saying is, this is the budget that the taxpayers said when we took forth $12,470,000, the taxpayers said 2 to 1. No. That's what they said. That's what everybody in this community said that came out and voted. Okay? So those taxpayers are people we have to listen to as well.
So did you change after they voted?
We brought back the budget. They voted down the $12,470,000. We came back with $12,300,000 because that's responsible budget that we've worked 6 months on.
I understand. Still no.
No, we didn't. We came back with a fiscally responsible budget. And sir, I'd love to have you come to those budget meetings.
I am trying to get what I can.
That's where we could work on it, folks. It's at those meetings, not when we're trying to pass it.
Further discussion? Yes, sir.
One is, he mentioned about the cost of section to go to referendum. I was told in the town office that if we go on the 31st, it doesn't cost us anything because the town is having a referendum on it. So I'd like a clarification on that.
Is there anyone who wants to provide a clarification?
That's why we'd like to pass one tonight, Doris. We'd like to pass it tonight, this fiscally responsible budget, and come back next year and go back to budget meetings.
And the other
Because
thing,
after the 31st, it will cost us.
and the other thing is, you're just guessing, and I'm just guessing on why it was turned down at the polls. It could be because of the extra $300,000. It could be the attitude of some of the board members and the superintendent, what's been going on here for the last year. That could be the reason it was turned down, 2 to 1 to send you a message. I think we should have come back with a different figure. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I went to the polls and I voted no on that budget too. So you need to know that as well, that all teachers aren't asking for the $300,000. I also am very frightened about what that amount will cut from my building, will cut from the district. We've been threatened with it. I wouldn't say threatened because I think it's a realistic thing. That text could be cut, programs could be cut. But to increase by $2 and something is insulting. It's saying that, I mean, if I went and bought that's not a negotiation with the public to say, we hear that you want more money, but we can't give you $300,000, we can give you $2.31. It's insulting. Can we work with a different number at least, send it to the public and see what happens, but also know that teachers are voting no on this as well. I am very scared of the cuts that could happen, especially within my building and within the district if we increase $300,000. But we do need some sort of pull, some sort of help that says we're listening to you because we really don't feel listened to, and I just felt insulted.
Further comment on the article? Go ahead, sir.
No matter how much we put in this budget, the teacher's contract has been settled. We can't add any money to that contract. It has been settled. We can't add any money to that contract, and we won't negotiate that contract in public, Tracy. We can't.
I understand that. Has the contract been signed by our lead negotiator, David Cox?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
that's the information I'm not sure that we have.
So we can't add money to the teachers' pay this year. We can't. So if we put more money in this, we can't add money to it.
Correction on that. You can agree as a board to give the teachers more money. Go to the negotiating team and ask to open the contract up on salaries only or pay. You can do that. At any time, as long as both parties agree to open that up, it can be opened up. And I'm sure if you brought that to them, they'd let you open it up on salaries and pay.
Yes, sir.
Does this budget represent a raise for the teachers? And did this budget represent a raise for the teachers at the meeting that it was voted down? And they added $300,000 to this to add their pockets? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Castro, we did open this budget up, and we did negotiate for more pay for the teachers. This was not a negotiating year, but we did. Now that it's signed, we can talk, we can say, we did. It was a joint effort between the teachers and the administration. They opened it up. We had a committee that did end up with a raise. This was not a raise year. This was reopened this year. Just like when we go into negotiations this year coming up, we're going to be talking about everything, but we can't talk about it in public.
Further discussion on Article 1? Yes, sir. It's been moved to have a written ballot on the motion on Article 1. All those in favor of a written ballot, raise your hand. More than 10% of the meeting having requested a written ballot will vote on the pending motion by written ballot. The pending motion is, do you approve the amount of $5,222,460 for Article 1? yes, 54 no. This meeting has the authority to raise the amount or lower the amount for Article 1. So if the meeting is opposed to the two amounts that have been proposed so far, somebody should make a motion on another amount because the meeting has an obligation to adopt the budget for the RSU. So is there a motion for a different amount on Article 1?
Can I just say, if we pass this tonight and then it fails with the public, I'm just hoping there is another, maybe we could try another public budget meeting night, because the way that that has to happen is the public is allowed to speak, and then the board says what's going to happen, and then we're not allowed to speak again. And it's very difficult because we don't know what they're going to say, and we've never had a chance to respond to that since that meeting. So I wonder if maybe we could have another one of those meetings if this turns out again like it has in the past. I make a motion that we increase Article 1 by $137,000 because that's the amount that was just put in the undesignated funds. Seems like a fair amount. If you have to, maybe you keep it in the undesignated funds until next year's negotiations. I don't know how that works, but I make a motion to increase Article 1 by $137,000.
I object to consideration of the question.
On what ground?
I don't have to give a water. I don't have to state a reason. It doesn't require a second.
The moderator will rule that the motion is in order. Is there a second to the motion, which is to increase the amount? It's been moved and seconded to increase the amount by $137,000. So that comes to $5,359,457.69. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
I'd like to know from our superintendent, if we add this $137,000 to the budget, what it's going to do to our budget next year, what we'll have to raise, and should we get a curtailment, how many positions we'll have to cut in reality to keep that budget? That's a fair question.
If you add, excuse me, if you add that 137,550 right here, and then you go back and you add the 37,550 to the carry forward balance, it's a wash. What you need to remember is that next year, when you add that, you start in the hole of 137,550. So you don't start from a zero base, you start from a negative balance to fund your budget. So you have to find that from somewhere in your following budget, or increase the taxpayer by the 137,550.
Can I make a point of clarification just to ask? If this money is approved in the budget for Article 1, but then it isn't expended under Article 1, then it would kick over at the end of the year into undesignated fund balance for the following year.
Right. If we don't spend it, it would carry forward.
If it's spent during the current year, then it would obviously not be available in the following year, and I don't know what the impact would be.
I'm making the assumption that you're increasing the 137,550 so it will be spent, not so it will be carried forward, because that, you're right, we don't have to spend it.
But I thought that was the question that I thought I heard the person asking, is what happened if it wasn't spent?
I guess the intent is to spend it, but we've been told before that we're not in charge of that anyway. So yes, the intent would be to spend it.
The pending motion is on an amount of $5,359,457.69. Further discussion.
So, if there is going to be cuts there, I thought at these meetings we voted down not to put in new positions like administration positions. We cut the grunts, but we hire chiefs. So again, you're not listening to us. And if there is cuts to be made, then maybe we should go where the people are saying they want the cuts. They don't think we need these chiefs.
I understand that, but it's quite different when you're on the inside and you're managing a $12.3 million budget and a staff of 220 full-time employees and another 100 in support staff through substitute teaching. So when you're looking from the outside in, it looks very different from what your needs are on the inside.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to comment on the two open letters that were printed in the newspaper, one shortly after the vote from the last district-wide meeting.
Do they relate to the school budget?
Yes, they do. When we talk about bullying in school, I think these two letters to the editor, letters to the residents, are bullying from the school board. In my opinion, there was misinformation in the letters. When you talked about, when we were here at the district meeting the last time, we made changes to the budget that wouldn't affect the current year's mill rate. And that letter was an intimidation, the first letter, after that district-wide meeting, because you talked about what is the future budget in 13-14 going to happen, what's going to happen to that budget. In my opinion, because you were talking about a budget that wasn't even proposed yet, you were intimidating the public into voting the way you wanted us to vote. You wanted us to vote that budget down because it wasn't your budget. You gave misinformation. You said the mill rate was going to increase by 8.5 mils to some of the towns. That's only if the school board wasn't doing their due diligence in proposing a budget that could work in the next fiscal year. You scared a lot of old people. I got a lot of calls saying, you guys, when you went to that district meeting, you increased the budget. You did the wrong thing. Well, we didn't. We didn't increase this budget right now that we're talking about. The letter was intimidation. It should never have been written. The letter that was written in yesterday's paper is similar intimidation. You talk about, you're the only one that has the information. You're the only one that have the knowledge to prepare a budget. Maybe so, but if you gave that knowledge and information to the public, maybe then we could be informed and help you make some good decisions. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. I'd like to move that the budget be approved at $5,085,457.69, which is a reduction of $137,550, and use the carried forward to fund that.
I need to understand your motion. Right now, there's a motion for $5,359,000. Are you proposing an amendment to that motion?
Yes.
And your motion is to amend that amount to how much?
$5,085,457.69.
And that's a
$137,550 reduction.
And is your intent that the salaries be funded by the undesignated fund balance amount?
Correct, the amount that we reduced at the last meeting.
Yeah, I think if you do what you just did, what you're actually doing is reducing the authority of the school board to spend even the $5,222,000 on salaries and personnel. if you reduce this article, they can't fund it at the current level, and they have to actually fund it for $137,000 less, which would essentially mean a cut of $137,000 for personnel. I don't, unless I'm misunderstanding something, is that your intent?
My intent is that they have $137,550 that they got from the last district-wide meeting vote that they're not using in this current proposed budget. And I want to fund this current article by that amount that was reduced at the last district-wide meeting.
Okay. To accomplish that result, and if that's, if the intent of your amendment is to apply the extra $137,000 to the current proposed level of teacher salaries, what the meeting would need to do is to approve the $5,222,000 amount and then reduce the additional local funds article by $137,000. So that way, the amount that's being raised in taxes would be reduced by $137,000, then the board would have to use the $137,000 in extra balance carry forward to fund this article. But if you reduce this article, you're actually reducing the amount that they can expend on teacher salaries, and I think they'd probably have to.
Well, then they'd have to use the 137 that they have in UDF, correct?
No, they aren't allowed to use it because you haven't given them the authority to expend that amount.
Well, I was going to make a motion at the next, on the article that was applicable, to add that.
To which article?
I believe it's Article 14.
Yeah, no, at the beginning of the meeting, what I tried to explain, and this is all complicated because it's all laid out by the state funding formula. These articles are giving the board the authority to expend the money. In other words, this gives them the authority to actually pay the staff this amount. The articles that are the revenue articles give them the authority to either collect taxes or spend the undesignated fund balance. So if you want to accomplish what I hear you saying, you would want to have the current level of expenditures, but you want it to come not by raising more taxes, but by using up the $137,000. And so the way to do that would be to approve Article 1 in the amount of $5,222,000 and then reduce the additional local funds article by $137,000. And then essentially the board would then have to apply the $137,000 in order to fund the current level of teacher salaries. If the motion that's on the floor would raise the amount that the board has authority to expend for teacher salaries and that would essentially require the board to then, if they pay those salaries, to do it from the extra $137,000.
And they would have that authority without coming back to the district-wide meeting.
They would, yeah. So I'll entertain any motion, but I think you might be making a motion that would do the opposite of what your stated intent is.
I'll withdraw my amendment and we'll just vote on the original motion then.
So, yes, sir.
It's on the floor right now. What will that do to the mill rate and all three balance?
The current motion on the floor is to approve Article 1 in the amount of $5,559,457.69, which is an increase in the amount recommended by the school board of $137,000. So the current motion would increase the board's authority to expend money for regular education by $137,000.
And my question is, what will the mill rate amount be down, so that the people know?
Well, if I can, I think it would make more sense to have the administration and the board answer that question. But I think what the intent of the people who spoke before was to use the extra money that's now in undesignated fund balance to pay that extra amount. So that, for this year, that would not change the mill rate.
Yes, if this group forced the board to spend $137,000.
No. So what the effect would be that money, if it was spent, that money would not be available during the year if an emergency came up or a cutback, number one. And number two, at the end of the year, if it were spent, then that would not be available as carry forward to apply to the following year's budget. If it's not spent,
The following year's budget would have to be increased $137,000 just to break even.
but if it were not spent, then it would go into undesignated fund balance, which is where it is now.
Right.
So
The majority in this room wants, which is all I'm saying. I want taxpayers to know what it's going to do to the tax.
The percentage that would go to Lincoln is $112,203. The percentage to Chester would be $12,787, and the Mattawampig would have $12,090 increase.
but not this year. Not in this year's budget, because
Not if you use the 137. But remember, you have to find that 130. You start 137 in the hole if you do that. Yes, because you've already.
This is one article.
Right, and you have 400,000 that you're already carrying forward that you already have to find. So that's, now you're at $500,000 you have to find to fund next year's budget.
Thank you.
the person who spoke made a motion to amend it to $137,000 less than the original amount, and then she withdrew that motion. So the pending motion is the motion to increase the amount by $137,000, which gets you to $5,359,457.69. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm confused about the 300,000. With this budget that we have in front of us today, that 300,000 isn't in there right now to carry over, right? Because we're going back to the original. So we would.
What 300,000?
Remember, you just said we'd have to come up with 400,000 next year.
When you look at you're talking about the expenditure side of the budget, but the revenue side of the budget has parameters around it also. So it's great to spend, but the money has to come from somewhere. So what happens is the carry forward balance, we anticipate how much money we will have to fund the next year's budget. Now again, we had the residual effect of the ERA funds, so we had additional funds in our budget. So we carried forward to fund this budget from last year's budget, $400,000, right? So when you build your budget for next year, you also have to have $400,000 to fund your budget. It's a way to use the funds that you bring in that are unanticipated, or if you get a grant or you use other funds like federal funds to pay for budgetary items, you end up with a revenue, right? You end up with a revenue. So when you fund that for your next year, that money's gone. When you build your budget for the following year, in order to stay status quo, you have to have that amount of money in your budget to fund it. And the goal is to have as fewer dollars to carry forward to fund your budget as possible, not to increase what you're carrying forward, because if you don't have it next year, you cut or you increase taxes.
The decision to carry that $400,000 forward within this budget and not use it as undesignated funds possibly, was that a board decision or a public meeting decision?
That's part of the budget building process. Just like when you start in your classroom and you build your budget, you tell your principals what you need, same thing. It's part of the budget building process. We receive additional revenues if we have students come in. Tuition students will end up with an additional revenue balance. What this is stimulus money that was not spent and carried forward in the prior year's budgets. But as you carry it forward, you tend to reduce that amount, so you're not carrying that much money forward in your budget, so that you don't have to cut when you don't have federal grants or revenue come in, revenue increases come in.
Could I try to clarify, maybe help? When you're going through the year, fiscal year ends on June 30th, and you approve a budget, way back the year before, at the end of the year, when you have your audit, it will usually, hopefully, better turn out that you didn't spend every cent that was appropriated by the voters the prior year, because you have to stay within the amount that was appropriated. So if somebody leaves or extra money comes in or something happens, you end up at the end of the year with some extra money. That automatically goes into the undesignated fund balance for the following year. When the board builds a budget for that following year, they have to make an estimate of how much money they're going to have on hand and how much of that they should apply to the following year's budget. And at least based on what I've heard tonight, they estimated that they would have $400,000 at the end of the year, and they actually had $407,000, but they only applied the $400,000 to the budget for this coming year. When you apply the undesignated fund balance to the budget, that's money that you don't have to raise in taxes because you already have it. So what they did, I gather, is they applied $400,000 of what they expected to have to help fund the budget and keep taxes from increasing. That's what the undesignated, that's what, when they apply it to the budget, they're actually spending it towards they're asking you to approve this extra money being expended to fund the next year's budget.
So if we do want to increase a line item or an article by $137,000, the responsible thing to do would be to increase the mill rate, and that way we know for sure we have the $400,000 carryover the next year. At least then it's upfront and open to the public in that way.
There's no guarantee that you'll have $400,000 next year. You'll probably have something. There's no guarantee as to how much that will be. Right now, if you spend the $137,000, you know you won't have that to help prevent a tax increase next year. Is there any further discussion on Article 1? The pending motion is to approve that article in the amount, yes, sir.
Just a question. The source of the $400,000, you referred to it as error. That was federal stimulus money from like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Is this the end, the last of that stimulus money?
We received $1,200 for this budget.
Okay, well, congratulations. So that is one-time money?
Yes, which is why over the course of the stimulus program, the goal was to reduce the amount you were carrying in your budget. So we want to reduce that amount because the stimulus money is gone. We won't get new money to fund that this year.
So if we spend it this coming year, it's gone, zero.
It's gone unless we watch our pennies really close and we try to build up enough through spending or increase our tuition rate, our tuition students, to make sure that we have additional revenue coming in fund that 400,000.
Okay, but if everything stays the same,
There's no money there.
then a year from now, you will be $400,000 short
That's right.
for
Could-
building the following year's
Could be, yes.
budget.
Could potentially be, yes, which is why we're doing zero-based budgeting and evaluating what we're spending.
Gotcha.
Any further discussions on the pending motion on Article 1, which is to approve it in the amount of $5,359,457.69, which is an increase of $137,000 over the amount that was originally recommended by the board. If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the article?
Excuse me, I already made a motion.
Was it on this motion or was it on the previous motion?
Motion
Okay.
was made, I made a motion, you will vote.
Okay. We'll vote by written ballot. 39 in favor and 48 opposed. So that motion is. So the chair will, the moderator will entertain another motion. 39 in favor, 48 opposed.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the original budget amount of Article 1, $5,222,457.69.
That exact amount has already failed, so...
70 cents.
Your second, that's withdrawal.
I think the motion the motion has been made. I didn't hear a second, so the motion is now on the original amount changed to 70 cents instead of 69 cents. Is there a second on that? It's been moved and seconded. In the original amount plus 1 cent figure, 70 cents. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of a written ballot? More than 10% having requested a written ballot will vote by written ballot. The pending motion is $5,222,457.70 for regular instruction. The ballots was for a lot of ballots. What? No, we called for a vote.
No. Unfortunately, I passed people out. That's one of the reasons I was 30 minutes late getting here. The pending motion is on the sum of $5,222,457.70, which is an increase of 1 cent from the original motion. And the reason for that increase is just because the original motion was already defeated by the meeting. So the person making the motion changed it by a cent so that it would be a new motion. Also, I'm going to ask that whenever anybody speaks, they come up to the
microphone and say their name and then speak, because I understand that some people in the back may not be able to hear all of the discussion that's going on. Can you hear me now? Okay, the vote on that was 37 to 48. That motion fails. Will someone make another motion? 37 yes, 48 no.
I would like to make a motion that we add 200,000 to Article 1, and I hope people will support that. Thank you very much.
Is there a second? Did I hear a second? Moved and seconded to add 200,000 to Article 1, which is a main motion in the amount of $5,422,457 and 69 cents. Any discussion? Yes, sir. Could you come up to the microphone, please? Say your name and then make a motion.
To explain, I make a motion that we go by secret ballot.
All those in favor, are you?
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, well, I'll entertain his motion, but then I'll allow you to ask your question.
What is this going to increase?
Wait, let me just, all those in favor of voting on this article by written ballot, will vote by written ballot. Go ahead.
What will this increase the mill rate in the town of Lincoln, Chester, Maryland?
The question is, what will it increase the mill rate in the various towns? And for purposes of this year's budget, it would increase, I think it would increase the mill rate by the increase that would result from a $63,000 increase in the budget, because you have the $137,000. One other thing I should say, if the authority to expend the money is approved, and then you vote to increase the additional local funds article enough to fund this, then it would increase the mill rate. If you don't do that, then you wouldn't have the money. You'd have the authority to expend it, but the board wouldn't have the money. So mill rate increase will actually come on the revenue articles.
The increase to Lincoln would be $163,800, which is about 3/4 of a mil. Chester would be 18,600, which I believe is about a quarter, and Mattawamkeag 17,580, about a quarter.
That would be if you didn't apply the 137.
Straight 200,000, if you increased it by 200,000, your bottom line.
But the 137 is a one-year free money, correct? So
Correct.
really, for the sustainability purposes, we have to calculate the mill on 200,000.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
My question was, and you may have answered this at the beginning and I missed it, what happens if this meeting is not able to approve a budget?
We revert back to the last publicly voted budget,
And
which is the budget that the referendum voted down, the $12,437,550 budget.
so basically, this budget plus 125.
$137,550.
That would
Webb, could you check that?
And that budget was voted on in a community election, and it failed 2-1. Why would we want to vote again in a community election on a budget that already failed? But we would have to? We would have to vote on the same budget that was voted down before? No, I mean at a community election. Assuming this meeting cannot approve a budget, then we would have to have the next community election would be on the the one that's 125,000 higher than this?
No. I hate to say it, but the town of Lincoln and RSU 67 are kind of in new legal territory when you ask that question. The state law was changed to adopt this double-barrel budget process where you have a budget meeting and then you have a budget referendum to approve the budget that was adopted at the prior meeting. The way the statute is written, if the district adopts a budget at a budget meeting and then it fails at the referendum, then what the statute says is that the last budget approved at a budget meeting becomes the budget until a budget is approved at a budget meeting and then a referendum. So the budget that was adopted at the prior meeting would become the interim budget until you actually approve a final budget at a meeting and a referendum. So the board has authority. The board wouldn't have to lay off all the teachers because you hadn't adopted a budget. They could operate under that prior budget. But they would have to have another budget meeting and another referendum, and they have to keep doing that indefinitely until you finally approve a budget at a meeting that gets approval at a referendum. So this process will go on forever until you adopt a budget that can be approved that is approved at a referendum. The comment I've often made is that we can elect the leader of the free world in one election, but it takes 2 elections to adopt an RSU 67 budget.
I'd just like to add that this is a $200,000 increase, would be about 3/4 of a mill rate for the town of Lincoln. And just for Lincoln Paper and Tissue, which recently has had machines down and struggling to keep people working, it would up their taxes by $42,000.
So is there any further discussion?
So how often would these public meetings have to be held? Is it once a month, once every 2 months, once every 6 months, once a year? In other words, at what point would the interim budget become the de facto budget?
Probably by the time we were ready to do the 2013-14 budget.
There is, well, no,
June.
can I answer the question, because I think there's a more precise answer. You have to keep on going all the way through the whole school year. But the statute, I have to look to see if there is a time limit within which the next budget meeting has to be held. The statute gives authority to the town if a budget, you keep going through the process, and at the time that they commit their taxes, a budget hasn't been adopted, then the towns are authorized to go ahead and commit their taxes for the year based on the budget that was approved. That doesn't obviate or eliminate the requirement that the school budget, the RSU, keep trying to adopt a budget. If the RSU doesn't adopt a budget, what I would caution you about not adopting a budget, because I think that would essentially prevent you from borrowing money. It would have a very adverse effect on your financial standing.
At what date does the town have to commit money for the RSU budget?
I don't know. That's done, the commitments are made town by town, and I actually don't know what the schedule is.
25th of each month is the SF?
No, they have to pay the RSU every month, but when at some point the towns have to commit their taxes and start assessing the taxes. That's done at different times in each town.
And when does Milton do it?
Oh, they have to put out an estimated tax bill based on the last budget, and then when a budget is finally adopted, everyone will get an adjustment to their taxes to reflect an increase or decrease.
If the last vote was 2-1 against, does anyone have an informed opinion as to why it was voted down? Was it because the budget was too high or too low?
You know, you ever hear the thing, truth or dare, you know, that saying? Anyway, I want to say that this, yeah, well, that too. The budget, if the budget was $200 right now, I don't think it would pass. And the reason I don't think it would pass is because of a trust issue. We have a school district that, one of our schools is a model school for the state of Maine. What's that telling us? It is the model school. We have great teachers. Something's got to be happening, right? We lost good administration. We're bringing new administration in. We're adding administration. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And that's half of our problem here. It's a trust issue, people. That is why this budget is not going through. And it's scare tactics. Okay? I've been hearing the mill stuff for a long time, Mr. Sutherland. Okay? Long time since I was a town employee. First time I was hired here. I heard it every year. Nobody wants to raise the taxes. Nobody wants this mill to close down. Okay? We all understand the budget. We all understand money. More so myself. I'm a businessman. Paying a lot of money out. Okay? I don't want to see that mill close down. I love this town. I love this school district. We have great teachers and great administrators, but it's come down to a trust issue, and that's why this budget is not passing. Why can't we put the things on the table to people? It seems like every time somebody has a question, it's railroaded off to the side, and we come up with what you want us to hear. We want the truth. Put it down on the table. we're hiring this one. This is why we're hiring this one. Well, if you were in administration, you just said, you would know. Well, put it out there. We need to hire a vice principal at LP Burr because we're having problems there, or because people want facts. They're tired of hearing he said, she said stuff.
Just to respond to that, we had 7 different budget meetings and informational meetings. We had them at the board level. We did one in each of the communities. We did 2 in this room, and this is the 3rd one. And I have not had any requests for information, nor has this board, for any portion, any questions, any budget issues at all. So the questions that are being asked here for the first time when this budget process started last November, which included every teacher in this district and included every administrator in this district, and then the administrative team put forth the budget to bring to this board, who then questioned and questioned and questioned, publicly did meetings, PowerPoints, and we're here today. So this is the 3rd time we've been here. But this budget process it's not an easy task, and it starts in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
Clay. Frank just stood here for 5 minutes and told you what the problem was, and you addressed it a totally different way, talking about no one went to the budget meeting. He hit it right on the head. The reason it didn't pass wasn't because it was too much money, like he said. It's because of what's been going on here for a year and a half. We've had the chairman and the assistant chairman tell us, oh, we don't know there's a problem. You go to a school board meeting, you ask a question, we got a policy, we can't answer that. You've got more policies than God only knows what. You can't answer a question because you've got a policy that says you can. Your teachers are scared to death to speak up in this community, and you don't accept that. You don't want to use it half decent. You don't want to change, and that's the reason, like he said, it isn't going to pass. We're just wasting our time here tonight. No matter what, we come up with a figure, it isn't going to pass on the 31st. Just because you people have got the attitude you have and you're treating your staff the way you're treating them, losing good teachers. We've asked you for a year and a half to straighten up and use them half decent. Do you do that? No. You act like you can't even hear us when the whole community says you've got a problem. So please address the problem. Then we can pass the budget.
I would like to address this.
Could you just say your name just so we...
My name is Chris Manley. I'd like to address this trust issue and almost wonder if it's possible that there could be some misinformation in the school board meeting minutes. I went through and looked at the Finance Committee meeting dates, and I just want to read through these dates in the activity from July of 2011 up until May 30th. 7/6/11 have not met. 8/3/11 have not met. 9/21 committee meeting met to review reimbursement mode. 10/19/11 met to review state reimbursement. 11/15 no meeting. 11/4 met last night, started to put together budget. Next meeting in January. January 4th have not met. February 1st have not met. 2/15 Finance Committee met but did not have enough personnel for a meeting, so they did not meet. 3/7 have not met since last meeting. 4/4 budget books. There will be a board budget workshop. 4/11 Finance Committee met to review tentative budget. 4/25 have not met. 5/2 have not met. 5/16 have not met. This can't be right. These meeting minutes, and I just wonder if maybe this is sort of where some of this might be stemming from. Out of the last 11 months, did not meet 64% of the time. It did meet 36% of the time. So you keep hearing all this work and everything else, but when you go back into the information to see what the activity has been, hasn't met. So I think that probably may be where a lot of the confusion might be coming from.
I don't know, Jackie. I know that the meeting minutes have to be approved by everybody to be accepted and put online and stuff like that. What's a point of order?
Point of order is an objection, and I think the try to avoid talking about personalities.
Okay. So anyway, that's fine. Thank you.
We have 2 board meetings each time after a budget meeting, after a finance committee meeting. That's why it would be 50% that we haven't met, because we have 2 meetings each month. We increased our meetings. Right. We increased our meetings.
Right.
That's why.
Actually, I looked at, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I did look at, I did take that into consideration, and these percentages are out of 11 months, not 12 months, because for June, the meeting minutes are not up. I know there was some confusion about whether or not you did meet. I think you stated you didn't meet, but Jackie said you did meet, so I know there was some confusion there for June, so I left that out of my formula, and I did it month by month, not meeting by meeting.
What I mean is, we have a meeting this Tuesday, then we have 2 board meetings. We increased our board meetings. So we would have met before the first one, but not the second one, and not maybe the first board meeting then the following month, but we would have met before the second meeting that month. We increased our meetings to 2 meetings a month.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right, and what I'm saying is my formula is not based on number of meetings, it's based on number of months. Out of 11 months, I didn't count June because there was some confusion, and again, the meeting minutes are not up. So I did not count the number of meetings. I counted the months, and out of the months, the meeting minutes indicate that you met 4 times out of the last 11 months, and you did not meet 7 times. And I'm just going by the meeting minutes, so I know I'm not...
Everybody here is welcome to come to those finance meetings, as long as we're not talking about personnel. Everybody can come to those meetings.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Good.
As long as we're not talking about personnel.
Okay.
We're definitely getting off the subject of Article 1 here. Is there another?
Jim Trask. Mr. Clay said that the budget failed for other reasons other than it being too high. I would disagree with that. I think if this budget that the board has proposed is back to the people, it will pass 2-1 or better.
Just to further address, please do not include about keynotes, because one keynote was erroneous with information and also did not have all the information, and the second keynote that was presented, and this was on April 25th, and then on May 2nd, the second keynote was a little bit hamstrung because some of the information was not allowed to be put out there. I'd also like to further state that on the May 2nd meeting, I brought actual information in, and I watched very few school board members really even look at the packet of information on how you're going to impact student learning based on what the Centers for Disease Control, which is a very well-respected thing. This is why it's not passing. It is about the budget.
Yes. Let's confine our remarks to Article 1 going forward.
Well, could I please have an explanation again, because I'd like to know salaries, fringe benefits, and professional services, a little bit clearer breakdown on that, so I can figure out whether I want to continue to vote this down or to pass it.
Is that a specific question?
That is a specific question.
And what are you asking for?
I would like a little bit further explanation about clarity with salaries, fringe benefits, and professional services.
Is there anyone who would like to respond?
I have a statement. Everybody's saying here, trust. If there was a man sitting there, would you trust him better than you would a woman? And how many of you people have called the office and asked this lady for information?
I think
maybe 1 or 2 out of the group.
Let's try to keep this to Article 1. The question was, is there further information about salaries and benefits than has been provided to the meetings?
Fringe benefits are workman's comp, Medicare, FICA, course reimbursement, workshops, dental insurance, health insurance. purchase professional services or anywhere from any types of professional development that are brought to you. Anytime we contract someone to come into the district to do anything, anytime we send someone out of the district to attend anything. Salaries, these are teacher salaries. Teacher salaries. Subs, teacher salaries, subs, and ed techs that are general ed, as well as the stipends for what are they? With the stipend, any stipends that teachers are receiving that come out of there. After school programs, things like that.
To respond to your question about how often the meetings have to be held, the head ballot supervisor from Lincoln had a copy of the statutes. The way the statute is written, it says that the next budget meeting has to be held at least 10 days after the referendum. It doesn't say when it has to be held, but the statute does say that the district has to keep trying to adopt a budget to become the final budget. And then it does say what I said, which is that if a budget hasn't been adopted at the time that the towns have to commit their taxes, they can go ahead and commit their taxes based on the budget that was approved at the last budget that was approved at a budget meeting.
And the last budget that was approved at a budget meeting was the 12.4 million? Okay. So really pretty close to what we're talking about tonight.
Sir, could you say your name just?
I'm sorry, I'm Bill Davis, I live on Taylor Street.
Mr. Moderator, I'd just like to point out something in this article, and the question was concerning more specific information on salaries. This salary line, as our superintendent explained, covers teacher salaries. Those are contractual obligations that we have. We have contracts with our teachers and with all the bargaining units, and those contracts are in place, so they become contractual obligations on our part to maintain. And that's, those are a matter of, if you wanted real fine details on it, they're a matter of, once they've been approved and signed, they're a matter of public record. So you can access them. Never. So, I don't know if that helps or not, but just to try to clarify.
I think the only way we're going to move forward, if we are given some opportunity to voice what the real issues are and be listened to, because it is not gender, it is not money, it is not change. And the only way that we're going to move forward in this district, if we have an opportunity to deal with whatever it is, and we haven't had that opportunity. We had Amy Marsh come in and do a study, and that hasn't been released to us. That hasn't been released to the board that I know of, because I'm pretty sure if it was, they wouldn't be saying statements like that. We need a way to be able to move forward. And it's not people telling us what our issue is and us saying no, 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 and not being able to say what our issues are. We can't move forward like this. We can't be back and forth and disagree like this. We have to have something. I don't know what it is, but this is going to continue to happen if we're not given some sort of way to communicate with each other and say, how do we move forward?
Take a moment to collect my thoughts. It's a complicated issue. This board is divided. We hear the public. I understand, as I'm hearing now, that there's division within this group here as to whether it's a personnel issue or a trust issue is the proper word, I guess, or is it a budget thing? we do need to move forward, and you hit the nail on the head, and the question is, how can we do that? By increasing the budget, 200,000 for teacher salaries and whatnot, it's creating a plausible denial that it is a trust issue. And that's where the dilemma lays. Is it a trust issue or is it not? In an attempt to move that forward, I would like to make an amendment to the motion, okay, to reduce it down to the original 522,457, and I guess I have to go 71 cents. I know that's humorous, but regardless of what the number is, we're defining an issue. Now you have a chance. If you believe it is a trust issue, I ask you to vote for this amendment, and that will be a loud and clear voice, and it will decide as to whether it is an underhanded ploy of union teachers to increase their salaries, whatever the case may be, whatever plausible denial that comes up. I don't believe it is a pay raise for the teacher issue. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it's a money issue. I believe it is a trust issue. There's a trust issues within the board itself. This normally for the budget, when it's turned down, it goes back to the board. It is a board issue to deal with the budget. It has always been that way. Sarah Crockett's in the crowd. In her 16 years, whenever a budget was taken, it was given back, taken to the board. It is a board decision. My wish Mary Keegan was here. She started on the board in 1990. I've consulted with her. Since 1990, between the two of us, we've had coverage of this board. The budget has always been a board issue. It was a board workmanship that dealt with the budget. It was a board issue. This time around, it went back to the Finance Committee. The whole board as a whole was bypassed in the development stage, if you will, in my opinion. That has caused a trust issue within myself. So we need to decide whether is this a trust issue and we're going to go back and forth and fight and argue, or are we going to define as to whether it is a trust issue or not. I asked if someone would second my motion that we could, that we could go to the 522 and people would vote for this rather than the $200,000 increase, to do it as a sign that it is a trust issue. It is not a budgetary issue. And that will help to create the division within the board. I believe it will help eliminate, not create, but eliminate the division in the board. And I think it would help eliminate the division in the public.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the main motion, which is to raise the article by 200,000, to reduce that back down to $5,222,457.71. So the present motion on the floor is the amendment, which would bring it back down to $5,222,457.71. Further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
What?
Motion, we have a written ballot on the amendment, please.
Okay, all those in favor of a written ballot? Okay, by saying aye. We'll vote by written ballot. Yes, sir.
Yes, Jim Brown. I'd like to ask board members, who supports this budget? The original one that we're voting on tonight. 1, 2, 3. Who doesn't support it? Who abstains?
I'd also like to add one of the initial budget.
Could you speak to a microphone so that...
I just wanted to add on June 20th is when the school board voted and approved the budget that was presented tonight, not just the finance committee.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to withdraw my statement based on what Mr. Edwards said, and I would like to withdraw it because it felt like some true hearing what people were saying to you. So I would like to withdraw my whichever it was I made.
Did you make a motion to increase it by 200,000?
I did.
And who seconded that motion?
Somebody did back there. I heard it.
Okay, so the main motion has now been withdrawn, and the amendment was an amendment to the main motion. I would suggest that the person who made the amendment now make that same motion as the main motion. So it's now been moved to approve the budget for Article 1 in the amount of $5,222,457.71. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Making progress. So the matter on the floor now is the original amount increased by 2 cents. Is there further discussion? And I believe that the gentleman who made the motion to vote on the amendment by written ballot, I hear him saying that he moves to vote on the main question by written ballot. Is there a second? Are all those in favor? 10% having, no, we voted on the amendment, but now it's a main motion. So we're going to vote on the main motion now by written ballot in the amount of $5,222,457.71.
They always say, Oh, I know, I know. Why I'm still here. Pathological. Yes, if not professional. See how this turns out. Right, exactly.
No, I didn't know it was that. Oh my gosh, they went through the
Right, and they're rolling down the window because it only goes down this far, so then they get up the sunroof, and they're like, wait.
I had no idea who was going to sit out waving.
There you go. As long as you're waving with more than one finger, it's not a bad thing. And I say one miracle at a time, Tom. That's all we can afford at the moment. Yeah, sometimes I think that's been applied to me. I'll be honest. Yes. I know part of it is just the process. You have to keep doing this until.
Okay, I'd like to say that at this rate we will have approved all 14 articles by the middle of the day on Friday. The vote on Article 1 in the amount of $5,222,457.71 was yes, 72 in favor, 12 opposed. So, Article 1 has now been approved. Article 2. To see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for special education instruction for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. This article includes the cost of all special education programs. The Board of School Directors recommends $1,400,558. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand with your cards. All opposed. Article 2 is approved. Article 3, to see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for career and technical education for the 2012-13 fiscal year. This is the regional school unit's share of the assessment for vocational programs. The Board of School Directors recommends $595,840.99. Is there a motion? You have to say what the motion is.
Motion to accept.
No. It's recommended $595,840.99. It's been moved. And seconded? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your cards. All opposed, raise your cards. Article 3 is approved. Article 4, to see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for other instructional programs for the 2012-13 fiscal year. This includes costs for co-curricular, extracurricular programs. The Board of School Directors recommends $410,890. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve
As recommended. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your cards. All opposed? It's a vote. Article 5, to see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for student and staff support for the 2012-13 fiscal year. This article includes guidance, help, technology, and library services, instructional staff training, improvement of instruction, and student assessment services. Board of Directors recommends $1,060,795. Is there a motion on that amount? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Question?
Yep.
Before we race to a final conclusion here. It seems to me a bunch of issues have been raised here tonight, and most of them center around discussion and information. And all of this seems to have been happening for a number of years now, which, from my experience, which seems to indicate that it's really good that at least some number of people seem to be actually interested in delving down into the weeds, as the talking heads say on TV. Therefore, I would suggest or ask if it's possible, possibly to have a good deal more information in specifics laid out in the various papers. You say that salaries, et cetera, are public information. I guess I would like to know where one gets that information, from whom, when, you know, what kind of details, what expenses are, it keeps seeing references to EPS, what kind of expenses are required by various state and federal laws and regulations of which we have no knowledge whatsoever, and which are not. And also, it seems like a long time to wait until next June to start a budget process when the interest has peaked now, and it will be dead again by next May. And particularly, and perhaps information can be made more available about exactly when and where, and maybe no one will still show up, but maybe not they will. But also it seems to me that real budgets aren't made from the bottom up. I mean, right now we're approving, what, 12.3? Okay, that's what, 300,000 higher than last year? Okay, so next year will be 300,000 more than that, probably at the most, except you're starting in the whole 400,000, so it might be 300,000 less than this year. So you're starting with a number of 12 million. So the debate, it seems to me, would be, where should that be spent? And how should it be divided? We don't have to know how many pencils go into each classroom. It's how much goes into transportation, how much goes into salaries, more or less. More people, fewer people, period.
Article 5, further discussion?
Any of the information that you asked for is available at the central office. If there is information that anyone wants, they can come to the central office. I can go over the EPS funding formula for you, the state ED 279 subsidy report. I can do any of that for you. Just come into the office if you're interested. Any personnel information, we do have a right to know requirement that you do have to put it in writing to the superintendent and give us an amount of time to gather that information and put it together for you. But it's available.
Further discussion on Article 5. It's been moved and seconded in the amount of $1,060,795. Hearing none, all in favor, raise your cards. All opposed, raise your cards. Article 5 is approved. Article 6, System Administration. To see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for system administration for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. This article includes salaries and operating costs for the superintendent, business office, and board of directors. The Board of School Directors recommends $482,278. Is there a motion?
Move that amount.
That amount has been moved. Is there a second? Any discussion?
like to amend that to 450,000. It's a symbolic of no confidence in that for the superintendent's and the teachers and administration of the last year and a half.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor to reduce that by $32,278 to $450,000.
Reason?
Is there a second?
We didn't hear the reason.
Could you come to the microphone and state the reason?
Yes, the reason is hopefully the superintendent and the board will get the message of starting to use their employees better than they have. And she hasn't addressed that for a year and a half, so I think she doesn't deserve the full amount of this budget.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to reduce the amount to $450,000, which is a reduction of $32,278. Is there any discussion?
I just have a question. I believe I remember from the last meeting that whether we increase or decrease these line items, those monies can be spent or not spent as the board sees fit. So if they decrease this by $32,000, with his intention of that coming out of Mrs. Hamlin's paycheck, that is not necessarily what's going to happen. So my concern is who is going to lose that $32,000?
What I heard as the explanation was that this was an expression of a lack of confidence, not that it could come out of someone's salary, because there's a contract, presumably, on the salary. But the state law provides that any article that is approved by the budget meeting, that the board has authority to transfer 5% of any article to any other article. And so that, by law, essentially gives the board the authority to make adjustments during the school year. I'm trying to answer the question that was being asked. That's what the state law provides. It's a line item budget with limited transfer authority. So limited transfer authority is 5% of each line item can be transferred to any other line item. Further discussion on the amendment.
Mrs. Hamlin has a contract. We can't reduce her pay. She has a contract, and it's approved by the board. And the board supports Mrs. Hamlin. The majority of the board supports our superintendent, and will continue. Now, we need to have meetings moving forward, but we support our superintendent, and we won't be able, we can't and wouldn't reduce her pay right now. We have a contract that we all signed with her.
Is there further discussion of the amendment? Say again? It's been moved to vote by written ballot. All those in favor of voting by written ballot? More than 10% having requested that it be voted on by written ballot. We'll now have a written ballot on the amendment, which is to reduce system administration by $32,278 to the sum of $450,000. So I'll call for the vote. amendment to Article 6 was approved by a vote of 43 yes, 37 no. So we now are on the main motion, which is to approve $450,000 for system administration. Is there any discussion? There's been a request for a written ballot on Article 6, which is to vote on system administration in the amount of $450,000. How many people request a written ballot? So you voted to amend the motion to $450,000. Now we have to vote on the $450,000. How many people request a written ballot? More than 10% having requested a written ballot. We'll now vote on the main motion on Article 6, which is Article 6 in the amount of $450,000. Article 6, system administration in the amount of $450,000 was approved by a vote of 44 to 35. Article 7, to see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for school administration for the fiscal year 2012-2013. This amount includes salaries and operating costs for buildings, administrators, and secretaries. The Board of School Directors recommends $732,235. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded as recommended. Is there any discussion?
It is my opinion that we not amend this article down because these administrative contracts have already been signed, and like they've said before, we can't give them a pay decrease. But I would like, moving forward, to just ask this question. What are you basing administrative salaries on because they don't reflect experience, education, or the regional average?
Could you repeat the question?
What are you reflecting administrative salaries, especially the recent increases on, and also the new hires who have come in? What are you basing the salaries on because they don't reflect experience, education, or the regional average?
Mr. Moderator, I'd be glad to respond to that. And to say that while I respect what you're saying about this, that is a subjective opinion, and I respect that. But they're based on the resumes, on interviews, on regional averages, and based on the history of salary here in this district as well. It's based on a lot of different factors, but to just dismiss it and say that they're not based on education and on regional average, I think is a bit that may come up short of the whole story. Let me just say it that way.
I hope that I can give a concrete example without offending somebody, because I wasn't going to give the concrete example because I didn't want to offend anybody.
Well,
I'll say no names. Yep, I'll just say positions.
I would ask you not to identify
yes.
names or positions, but if you want to talk about it, abstract.
Thank you, that will help in my purpose too, not to. So, an administrator was recently hired at an increase of $3,000 of the exiting administrator who had, I'll say, more education and more experience. So why was the new coming administrator hired for $3,000 more than the exiting administrator when the exiting administrator had more education and more experience?
I'm going to rule as the moderator that it's not possible, I don't think, for the board to answer that question without being identified as a specific person.
Okay.
And I think you've made your point that in your view,
right,
those factors have not been properly considered. But so, I don't think you can go with it.
Okay, so I would just say, moving forward, please, when you say, and I quoted, we're watching our pennies really close, and we're evaluating what we're spending. And as soon as we make a decrease as a town and you shoot for cutting positions, that you look at other things you can also cut and also other places you can be fiscally responsible. Because I don't believe that in this article you have succeeded in being what you call fiscally responsible.
understand that we are looking to add a half-time assistant principal to the sum of approximately $26,000 at Ella Cooper, correct? And how much money does that cost to, how much is that to the taxpayers? Is it approximately $26,000?
Can you speak into the microphone, because I don't think that the meeting can hear.
So for this year, it will be completely covered by the grant, but next year, would the taxpayers pick up that money?
We haven't built next year's budget yet.
An NCLB coordinator will come out of the NCLB grant.
Okay. Should grant money not be available next year? I too feel that it is fiscally irresponsible to add administrative staff when one of the other controllable areas within your budget would be to possibly cut other positions. And as a parent first, and as a teacher second, I do not want to see us losing any more of our very qualified ed techs in our classroom that do help our students. So I just want that to be heard.
Further discussion on Article 7. Yes, sir.
I'd like to amend the amount on Article 7 to $764,513. I hear your symbolic gesture, and it's going to be, we're paying attention. But we can't get rid of the people who write the paychecks, who take care of the insurance. Those people make the district run. And that money, I'd just like to make that $764,513. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is that the $32,278 back in?
If my calculator's right.
Okay. So there's an amendment to increase Article 7 to $764,513, which would be an increase of $32,278. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and second.
I just have to say that I agree, because I'm so afraid of where that $32,000 is going to be cut, because it's not going to be cut from the superintendent's salary. So we're doing a crapshoot if we cut that $32,000 of where that will be cut. And if it's kind of a trust thing too, if you trust what's going to be cut, then okay. But if you don't trust what's going to be cut, then we have to make this budget what it is so that no surprise cuts happen.
So we're discussing the amendment which would increase Article 7 to $764,513. Any further discussion?
That deduction could come out of the reserve fund, which would have $137 in there. Is that correct?
That you're saying that increase?
No, that decrease that we voted on in Article 6. She's worried it'll come out of the teacher's salary or whatever. It couldn't come out of the reserve fund of 137 that we discussed way back 2.5 hours ago.
No.
Is that correct?
No, I think what you did in the last article was you reduced the board's authority to spend the money in Article 6. So they can't spend more now than $450,000 under Article 6.
She talked about a crapshoot as a crapshoot here. We've been waiting 2 years for some of these board members to wake up and start dealing with the problems. They're telling us tonight, hold all this in and we've got your backs, we're going to do it. I personally don't believe that. Maybe one or two of them do it, but it takes more than a couple of people. There's several on this board that hasn't seen the light yet in 2 years. So I think it's a crapshoot not to reduce our salary and send a message to them.
Okay. As a point of clarification, I would say you've reduced the amount, but the meeting can't reduce a salary that's been established. No, I understand it. I just was correcting the detail. pending motion is to amend Article 7 to $764,513. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll vote on the amendment. Yes, ma'am.
Secret ballot?
You've requested a secret ballot, a written ballot. Is there, all in favor of a written ballot, please raise your hands. More than 10% having requested a written ballot, we'll vote on the amendment, which is to increase Article 7 by $32,278. We're voting on the amendment, and then whatever happens on the amendment will then go to the main amendment to Article 7 failed by a vote of 37 yes, 44 no. So the question before the body is the original motion, which is the amount of $732,235 for school administration. Is there a motion? Well, that motion is already on the floor. So is there any further discussion?
I guess I would ask the superintendent what she envisions would happen within our district if this budget was cut by $32,000. What changes does she see happening?
We would go back with the administration to the drawing board and see what we could do without.
Is there further discussion on Article 7? If not, I'll call for a vote. You requested? Okay, all in favor of Article 8 as recommended? Raise your I'm sorry, Article 7. Raise your cards. All opposed? Article 7 is approved. Article 8, transportation. To see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for transportation for the 2012-2013 fiscal year, the Board of School Directors recommends $744,778. Is there a motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded in the amount of $744,778. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your cards. All opposed? Article 8 is approved. Article 9, maintenance. To see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for facilities maintenance for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. This article includes all costs for maintenance and operation of buildings, grounds, and equipment. Board of School Directors recommends $1,650,167.32. Is there a motion? It's been moved and recommended. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
We have head custodians in all the schools, am I not right? Yes. And there's one department head in that.
Could I ask that you speak into the mic, because I don't think
We have a building and grounds staff that manage the buildings all day, and then we have a facilities director.
So,
and then we have janitors who work at night.
Okay, so at LP Burke, who's in charge of that school? Well, I'm just, so we do have, I guess what I'm getting at is, just like we have principals in charge of them schools, we have custodians or maintenance people or whatever, and we have very good ones. I know some of them, and I don't know their exact titles. That's why I'm trying to.
Yes, we have a building and grounds person in each building who supervises them. We have janitors that work at night.
Okay. And in here, there's increases. Right?
Yes.
Built in here, and that's negotiated. I realize.
Yep.
Okay. So if the board went back and they're going in negotiations, I guess this next year, if I'm not mistaken. Do we need, or could they be paid a little more money, take more responsibility, and report to you directly instead of having a head of all the schools? See what I'm saying? Like you have principals report to you. Can we have the janitors or head custodian each school instead of one person in charge of all of them? I don't know how much that is. Say, I'm assuming probably 40,000 anyway. You know, to save money for the district.
No, that wouldn't be a money saver. We would end up spending additional funds. We have someone who manages all of the building and grounds maintenance repairs. He manages all of the district-wide spending. He does all of the bid process. He does all of the roofing and grounds. He manages, he does all the supervision of the bus garage. He manages all the things at the superintendent's office. It's a big job.
So the
It's not something that can be done because the building and grounds crew run the buildings all day. They don't do district-wide. He's district-wide.
So these individuals couldn't handle their school taking care of their budget of it?
No.
Further discussion on Article 9. I'm sorry, Article 9. No, Article 9. Is there any further discussion on Article 9? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of Article 9, raise your cards. All those opposed? Article 9 is approved. Article 10, see what sum the regional school unit will appropriate for debt service and other commitments. Board of School Directors recommends 0. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second? Yes, this is a recorded vote. It seems completely ridiculous, but that is what the state law is. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve 0. That the meeting approves 0 for Article 10. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And the ballot clerk, please count the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Article 10 is approved by 73 in favor, none opposed. Article 11, to see what sum the regional school unit will be authorized to expend for all other expenditures. The school board recommends 0. Is there a motion? Okay, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed, please raise your hands. Article 12, state local EPS funding allocation. Is there a motion to waive? Oh, I'm sorry. 75 to 0. 75 to 0 on Article 11. Article 12 is the state local EPS funding allocation. Is there a motion to waive reading of the article?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? We'll waive reading of the article. Is there a motion? The move is recommended. Is there any discussion? Is there a second, first of all? Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Could someone in general terms explain what the heck this means?
This section is what the EPS funding formula requires you to raise in order to get the state subsidy.
But it's more than the 12.3.
No.
No, the 9.4 is the amount being appropriated, which includes the local share plus the state money. The amount being raised of the 9.4 is the 3.1.
No.
Further discussion on Article 12. Hearing none, all in favor, raise your cards. This also has to be a recorded vote. All opposed, raise your hand. Okay, 68 having voted in the affirmative, none opposed, Article 12 is approved. Article 13, non-state funded debt service. Is there a motion to waive reading of the article?
Motion to waive.
Seconded. Been moved and seconded to waive reading. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? Is there a motion on Article 13?
Motion to approve is read.
Okay, is there a second? Moved and seconded to approve 0 for non-state funded debt service. This also requires a recorded vote. All in favor, raise your cards. Uh, 69 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Article 13 is approved. Article 14, additional local funds. Is there a motion to waive reading of the article? Is there a second? All in favor, raise your cards. All opposed, raise your cards. Is there a motion? The motion is approved to waive the reading. Is there a motion on Article 14? This one has to be voted on by a written ballot. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this article as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. This article has to be approved by a written ballot.
Mr. Moderator, I just wanted to say you were worth $220 an hour. I just wish you lived in Chesapeake. And no offense, but I hope I don't see you for another year.
I won't say the feeling. The question has been raised as to whether the additional local funds article should have been reduced by the amount that the administration article was reduced. And the answer is that if you want to reduce the tax commitment by that amount, it should be. And a motion to reconsider the vote would be in order if you want to make that.
I make a motion to reconsider that because people didn't understand and we're reading it. And
Second that. It's been moved and seconded to reconsider the vote on the additional local funds article. You reduced the administration article by
$32,278.
$278.
Reduce.
Well, we have to vote on the motion to reconsider first. So, all those, is there further discussion on the motion to reconsider? All those in favor of reconsideration, raise your hands. All those opposed to reconsideration? Okay.
Moderator, can I ask a point of order?
Yes.
Aren't they still counting the votes from the original motion?
Yes, we are.
Not,
There was a motion made and seconded to approve Article 14 as recommended. I believe those ballots are being counted now, aren't they? So wouldn't we have to wait for the results of that first before we go anywhere else?
I think that's a valid point. I think we should have the vote and then have a motion to reconsider.
Appreciate it. I'll take all of it.
So Article 14 was approved by a vote of 73 yes to 3 no. Is there a motion to reconsider that vote?
Make a motion to reconsider the vote.
Second. Moved and seconded to reconsider. Is there any discussion? If not,
I would like to know if you could take that and put it in the unusable funds.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear back here.
If we could just leave it all the same and add that to the unusable funds section that they have the 137,000 in?
If the motion on Article 15 stands and you raise this amount in additional local funds, essentially what that will mean is there's an extra...
No, not raise it. I didn't want to raise the amount in the additional local funds. I wanted it to remain the same instead of being adjusted down.
I used the wrong... If you leave the amount the same, you will be collecting as taxes the amount that you needed before you reduce the administration article. So if you leave it the same, the district will have an extra $32,000 and change that will go into undesignated fund balance and would be available to apply toward next year's budget.
Right, exactly.
If that's your goal, then you can leave it the same, and the money you took out of administration would be available next year.
Correct.
If your goal is to reduce the tax assessment for this year, then you need to reconsider this article and take it out of the additional local funds. In other words, reduce the additional local funds by the $32,000.
Right, that's what I was saying.
So if you want to have it go to next year, raise the same amount.
Right, so vote the same way you did before if you'd like that $32,000 to be used next year as additional local funds, but just put aside and not use this year. Like the capital gains account, but not since we don't have that.
If you want the money to be applied to next year's budget, you would vote against the motion to reconsider.
Right.
If you want to have the meeting have the opportunity to reduce the tax assessment for this year, you would vote in favor of reconsidering.
Right, since we're starting out next year $400,000 in the hole. Or we're getting $400,000 less than we were this year. Then it would give us a little bit of a buffer.
So the motion on the floor is the motion to reconsider. Right. Is there further discussion?
Reduce that to 32,000.
We have to vote on reconsideration first. In other words, it was approved, and now we're voting on reconsideration. Yes, sir.
We had that symbolic vote, Mr. Clay, and it passed, and I believe we should honor that symbolic vote. and that $32,000 needs to be reduced. But I don't think it's fair to get it from the taxpayer if we're not going to be spending it. So I think that we need to reduce this. So I would move to
support reconsideration.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of reconsideration, raise your hand. Those opposed to reconsideration. Motion to reconsider is approved. So procedurally where we are now is Article 14 is now back before the meeting. And Article 14, is there a motion on Article 14? By the 32,277.98, which is 32,278 minus, but we added 2 cents to. So, is your motion to reduce it by $32,277.98? Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded to reduce Article 14 by $32,277.98. Is there any discussion? What this would do is lower the tax commitment for this year by the reduction of $32,278 less the 2 cents that was increased for regular instruction. This article is required to be voted on by June 11th. It's 32. I actually haven't done the math. Is that?
Are we allowed to reconsider any article or just the one that we're on?
You can reconsider. Right now, we need to vote on this article. If you, after we finish voting on this article, if you want to make a motion to reconsider another article, you could. Say again.
not sure what other things we did. I think that's well, yeah, I guess you're supposed to. You know, I mean, I'm not that big items and stuff, but it just lets people know what's going on and things, you know. Haven't seen much of it. But, well, at least it's budget. That's the idea, is to try to get her, you know, eventually. It's going to take some time. Some stupid thing I wrote there, like in yellow, say, you know, or they could anyway, just for fun. Balance, access, right now, this data, and around here, an average age of compassion, step aside, for all this happening. I'm certainly missing the small touch in the NFL. There are 3 people. No, Vern's not a big football fan. As soon as I get to Commonwealth, she'd rather have her eye hooked up in a stick or something.
Mr. Moderator, can you explain where numbers you're getting, where you're taking it from?
What I'm trying to do, yeah.
So people can understand, thank you.
Yeah, in Article 14, the additional local funds amount that was originally in the article is $1,708,440.96. From that, we need to subtract $32,277.98, which is $32,277 $2,078 minus the other 2 cents. In other words, we raised it by 2 cents, and then we reduced it by $32,278. So the net reduction is $32,277.98, and that leads us to a total of $1,676,162.98.
What is the 1.496 million number?
That is the amount that the budget that was originally proposed exceeded the state's EPS model for additional local funds. So that number, the amount that it's above EPS, also is reduced by that amount. What you're really voting on, that's an informational thing, and what you're really voting on is the first number, which is the amount that you're going to raise in taxes. So both of those numbers should be reduced by the $32,277.98, and that gets you to $1,676,162.90. And that is assuming that the only reductions that you're making are for the reduction in the administrative line, and that you're not making any reduction for the $137,000 that will then be carried forward next year. So the amount that we're voting on for Article 14 is to approve Article 14 in the amount of $1,676,162.98. That's the current motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? This has to be done by a written ballot. I'll call for the vote. 6-6. And that takes us to Article 15. Is there a motion to waive reading of Article 15?
Motion to waive reading.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? Article 15 summarizes the total proposed school budget. And if you want to be consistent with what you've done up to this point, you should reduce the total amount by $32,277.98, which would lead to an amount of $12,267,722.02.
So moved.
There's a motion to approve $12,267,722.02, and that's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? What you're doing is reducing the total budget by the $32,278 and then adding back in the 2 cents. This is for the record books. This is required to be by a recorded vote as well. So all those in favor of the article in the amount of $12,267,722.02, raise your hands. All those opposed to the article, raise your hands. Say again. Article 15 is approved by a vote of 67 to 0 in the amount of $12,267,722.02. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Woohoo! You're out of here.
Good job.
Good job, Sam. Tired? Bedtime.
Yep.